Arif. I'm a GP with a specialist interest with women's health in very dark and cold England. And I'm joined by Tang.
I'm Karen Tang. I'm a gynecologist and a minimally invasive GYN surgeon, and it is also dark and cold in America, where I am. Not too much is different. We have so many common threads in what we do and what we experience, and so
Oh,
excited to be here with you.
thank you so much for joining us. So, for everybody who's on our YouTube pages, please follow me at Dr. Nighat Arif. And Karen, you are
At Karen Tang MD. So that's on all the platforms. So YouTube, on TikTok, Instagram, and now Threads. So
Same here. I'm exactly the same on all the platforms. Both of us connected in the pandemic. We have been working closely on women's health, and both of our content actually complements each other. I agree with a lot of things that she says. So, by the way,
absolutely, yeah.
I never contradict what she says, but we want to come on and introduce ourselves here on YouTube. The plan is hopefully going forward is that every week we'll have some regular lives and we'll have general Q&As that you might have, things that you might be too embarrassed to ask your GP or something that you feel is necessary to say. Do you agree with that, Dr. Karen? Is that's what we're looking for?
That sounds great. And I think, we can do it a couple of different ways. I think both of us are probably most active on Instagram. We can even, like do stories where we request people's questions, like, our lives coming up, like give us your questions that you want us to answer. Like you said, there's probably plenty of things that people don't feel comfortable, asking their doctor, asking their friends or family. So you can ask us and we'll answer anonymously. And, you can also just, like I think we both accept DM. So if you ever have something, just DM it as a question and we can always kind of put it on the list to respond to. I'm sure, there's plenty of things in, the current events, things that come up that we may want to just discuss together. So I think we can kind of do it like that. Let's be a great conversation. Dr. Nighat and I are very similar in a lot of ways. We joke that we are kind of the same person in different sides of the Atlantic. We care very much about women's health, reproductive rights, making sure that people understand their bodies. We're both moms. We both have books out about reproductive health. So I think, I think it'll be, great conversations and we're looking forward to it.
And no question is silly. You can ask us whatever you like. We are going to be led by you, our followers here on YouTube, because we really want to place ourselves as somebody that you could turn to. I feel like I should be your big sister that you can turn to. Isn't that right? We're like big sisters on this platform.
Exactly, yes.
And so if there's anything that you think I just want to know or I read about and I just want to double check, that's fine. What we might do is we'll complete all the requests together because sometimes it might be the same question. And then hopefully later on have a little bit more interactivity with you on our platform. But firstly, I want to congratulate my colleague. She's got her book out soon.
Yes, as do you. That's what we were saying. We have so many similarities where Dr. Nighat's book has been out in the UK and I believe, is it out now in the US as well?
It's out in the US, but it's not you can order it online to come to the US. So my book, let me just get it. I should be a bit more professional.
Yeah, show it.
There you go.
Yes.
Book
The knowledge.
And this book is essentially your guide to your whole female health. So your biological journey from menstruation all the way to menopause. But tell us about your book because I'm so excited because you can.
Yay! I didn't bring it with me. I'm in a parking lot right now, but it's called It's Not Hysteria. It's a guide to basically all the topics in gynecologic health. So there's chapters on endometriosis, fibroids, PCOS, infertility, miscarriage. So just basically like short, digestible chapters on everything you can possibly think of, all the myths and misinformation, but also, guides to figuring out what your own goals are for your health, like what you think of different treatment options like hormones and surgeries, and, guides to help advocate for yourself. And I just posted right before we got on a Goodreads giveaway that's starting today, only for the US, unfortunately. So followers in the US, Goodreads giveaway, you can follow the link in my bio. They're giving away 50 copies of my book. Yay! Yeah, so excited. And so hopefully some of you will get that. And then anybody who doesn't win the giveaway, there's also NetGalley. You can get an electronic advanced reader copy if you want to read it before the book is published in May. So my book doesn't come out until May, but pre-orders are open. Get them. And yeah, and Dr. Nighat are available. If people are still looking for holiday presents, like yours will actually be, available before the end of the new year and everything. And so very exciting.
I checked a couple of weeks ago. This is #1 for health on Amazon at the moment. So, well, it
That's
is
amazing. Oh my gosh. Congratulations. That's huge.
really
My
exciting.
goodness.
And it's a lot of hard work. Writing books is really difficult. And I
Oh my
wanted
gosh.
to hear both your book. What was the
Mm-hmm.
writing process like? Because mine was
It was crazy.
and we're both working clinicians. We're mums. I've got
Mm-hmm.
kids. You have 2 children.
I have three kids. Yeah.
Both 3 kids.
We were saying we're like basically the same person in different places. Yeah.
We are. And I'm very much entrenched in the UK in the NHS
Mm-hmm.
system, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't have an NHS system in America at all. So what
Mm-hmm.
was the process like for you, Karen?
It was crazy. So I like you wrote the book while I was working full time. So working full time, have the 3 kids, writing the book, and I was very like casual about it when I started off and got the book deal. I was like, these are things I talk about every day. I talk about them in my practice with my patients. I talk about them on social media. It's so simple. I'll just make a book out of it. Not realizing that, writing a book takes a lot of time. So in addition to the research it takes to kind of make sure you have all of the facts like most accurate, to making sure that it's understandable. My editor, I'm sure your editor did this too, like a lot of times came back to me with the drafts was like, like some of this is a little confusing. Like as someone who's not a doctor may not understand this, I had to rewrite it. So it went through many more drafts than I had kind of thought it would because, I didn't understand what it takes to make a book, publishable. So it takes a lot of work. Most people don't realize how many drafts a book goes through before it gets published. If you had to guess, how many drafts did you go through?
I probably went through. So I did the first. I would say the first draft, which I would say is a masterpiece, and that took me a good 6 months to actually write down
Mm-hmm.
because I'm dyslexic. So I would do recordings, and there was a dictaphone app that.
Oh, okay.
And then it went through the first read, and then they came back and said, "You need to change this, and you need to change this." I think in
Yeah.
total, there were 8 drafts that it went through
Oh,
because
something like, yeah.
I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have anybody medical on my team. My editor was a lay editor, and that was done on purpose because I didn't want the book to be
Mm-hmm.
full at all. I wanted 14-year-olds or 12-year-olds to pick up the book to be
Yep.
able understand what perimenopause is and also understand about fertility. So I wanted people to have an idea about what their biological journey is going to be like, but to make it accessible was the
Yep.
big. And I would always get my editor that would send me some notes back going, what's an endocrinologist and good
Yeah,
stuff.
that's exactly what mine said. They said like no, like I don't actually know what endocrinologist. I was like, oh my god, So there are a lot of times where we just sort of talk doctor speak and forget that words that we use are not words that the average person understands necessarily. And I'm like, oh shoot, I have to explain what that is. And so yeah, it was really really helpful to have that second and in a lot of cases like many different sets of eyes. So I had in addition to my book editor, I also had for certain chapters expert readers, in fields that I'm not an expert in. So I had a physical therapist, I had like a sex therapist, I had all these people kind of reading over chapters. So they would give me some feedback, and then once we had, I think I must have done at least for the just with my editor at least 2 to 5 revisions for the chapters, and then it went to copy editor who my copy editor was actually an ER doctor, but I thought that was really cool. So they kind of do like the nitty gritty of like the grammar and making sure that all your grammar is correct, and then they had a production person who was making sure that like some of this like the way that this paragraph is structured or whatever, or like how you kind of put the bullet points. So yeah, so many sets of eyes to make it a really nice
What was the thing?
functional book. Yeah.
What was the thing that you found that your lay editor you had to explain to them that you thought that's my bread and butter? That's what I do. Like I thought this was common knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, there were so many things that like for instance things like like speculums that she actually, some of this was really great because her response to it was like, oh wow, that's really cool that I didn't even think that most people didn't know this. So I mentioned in a chapter on GYN visits, like what to expect when you go to see a gynecologist. So I even talked about, speculums, they come in different sizes. So we
Yeah.
try and kind of use the smallest size to make it more comfortable. She's like, I didn't know that. And I was like, really? So some of these things where I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I would kind of like add a little bit more information because she's like, that's great. You should talk about that more because most people don't know this. So I was like, oh, so
Me,
things like that were, yeah, it was really great to get that feedback.
yeah, for me, it was again just on the speculum thing because I did a whole thing about the screenings that you should go to. So there's
Mm-hmm.
all the common questions I get. I'm still a virgin. Should I still go for cervical screening?
Yeah.
So I said, yeah. So all of that sort of I thought was common knowledge, and
Mm-hmm.
so if you haven't had sex yet and you're invited for cervical screening, yes, you should still go. Being a virgin or not being a virgin, it's got nothing to do with that. It's specifically a test that picks up very, very, very early changes to the cells, to the cervix,
Mm-hmm.
particularly pick up HPV. And we, although associate HPV with a sexually transmitted disease, you can get it through all different routes, not just through
Mm-hmm.
sexual contact. So that's why it's so important to get a cervical screen done when you're invited at the right time. The other thing
Mm-hmm.
that my editor thought was something that everybody should know was vaginal moisturizers, because she goes, I didn't know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, do we have the same editor? So we actually different types of lubricants. She's like,
Yes,
there are different. So we literally went into like, okay, like silicone based, water based, like oil based. Like we went through all these things. She's like, people don't know this. You should go into more detail. I was like, oh, that's really cool. So yeah, again, we don't realize like in our day to day, like what is completely new, interesting information to people necessarily. And so I thought it was super fascinating to go through this process and have that set of eyes and that lens be different, which is great.
so for a lot of people following us on my channels, one of the questions I thought that when we do our lives, it'll be nice to end on like funny stuff or maybe even poignant stuff that we've seen in our practice.
Yeah.
We're
Mm-hmm.
both working clinicians. So I thought that it's the start of the week, but if we reflect back to the last couple of weeks, Karen, has anything funny happened in your gynecology office?
Oh, so speaking of my office, I actually am starting my own practice. So I think both of us, again, very similar, has started independent private practices. That's what I'm going to be doing. I actually left my employed position, and now I'm just in the process of building my practice, which is going to open hopefully sometime in February. This is like hard hitting, late breaking news. Like, or hopefully in February we'll be opening my totally independent solo just me practice is very exciting.
Is
I will
this
say that the funny things that do kind of pop up on social media, like again, who knew that these are such big deals? I feel like every few months, like some trending video shows up about rectal pain, like rectal pain with
oh,
periods.
you did
Have
a
you noticed
video.
that?
You did
Oh
a
my gosh, like every few months, like someone on TikTok, a different person each time will make a video about like, oh my God, like stabbing butt pain with my period. Like, what is that? Like, it's horrible. And I've made a couple of videos now responding to it. You know, it's a common symptom of endometriosis if you have stabbing rectal pain with your periods, or things like bad diarrhea, bad constipation, pain with bowel movements with your periods. Really, really, really suggestive of possible endometriosis. It can also be things like pelvic floor muscle spasm, benign things like that. But incredibly common. I had no idea how common this was, but every time each of those videos goes viral, thousands of comments. They're like, I have that. What is that? And, I almost feel like sometimes we're doing like some sort of like a research study, like some sort of epidemiological studies with these social media videos where you actually see like how many people have a certain complaint. Like, I'm sure there's no like actual epidemiological data on like what percent of the population has rectal pain with periods,
yeah.
but you kind of see it in real life, like when
Should I,
you see some of these videos
you
and how
should
many people comment.
every couple of weeks we should just touch on it just so that people know that this is actually something that can't be put up with and you need to go and get it investigated.
Yeah,
You're right.
we should do that. Actually, that'll be one of the things we cover in our
Yeah.
lives will be like social media fun fact of the week, or like something that we saw that was trending that week and kind of respond to it. So I know you do that and I do that as well. We try and
Yeah.
kind of take things that are trending and make them educational. So we'll
Let's
do that.
that would be something that both of us can then touch on. Go, oh, did you see this on social media? I think the one that I get constantly in my office is because I insert coils, so I do copper
Oh
coils,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
also do marina coils, and the strings can feel
Mm-hmm.
quite rough at the end. And then I explain to
Mm-hmm.
them after 7 days the strings will soften.
Soften. Mm-hmm.
Always, I always get asked that, will my partner be able to feel the strings?
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah.
Funniest thing that I had this week was that a patient came in wanting to have her coil taken out. I put it in about 2 weeks ago. She
Uh-huh.
wanted the coil taken out, and she was just saying to me that the strings are just so hard that it really is causing my partner a lot of pain, and
Oh,
can't have sex anymore. Examined her. The strings were lovely. They were wrapped around the cervix, so high up. And honestly, I just this is like the bad doctor in me. I was just like, you need to go and tell your husband that actually that can't
don't.
be true.
That's not. I know. And so yeah, there's a lot of times where like I think there is some like kind of like the power of suggestion with that because
Yeah,
if they're like, oh my gosh, there's something in there, like because yeah, like what the way for those who don't know with IUDs, the strings are tucked. We kind of like if
yeah,
you picture a donut, we push the end of the strings
yeah,
kind of beyond the cervix, so they're not like sticking straight out at your partner. Like they shouldn't actually be able to feel it. Now, sometimes like people actually even ask to cut the strings really short because they don't want the partner to feel it. It actually makes it worse because then they're just like sticking straight out and then that can be scratchy. So I actually purposely leave them kind of longer just so that you really kind of tuck the
yeah.
end back
I,
there. Yeah.
I, I always say to my patient, I'm going to leave them for about 3 centimeters or 4 centimeters,
Mm-hmm.
because then
Yeah, exactly.
around that donut shape, then it makes it
Mm-hmm.
easier to find them with
Mm-hmm.
like a thread grabber when we want to remove the coil. But if they're really short, then they can actually go
Mm-hmm.
up to the cervix as well. But also, I
Yeah.
felt, and this is like the mean Dr. Nighat that day. I just the other thing I always try and say to women before I put the coil in is that I'm sorry, but no man is that well endowed that they can feel the strings.
I tell people don't even tell your partner that there's something that they can feel in there because otherwise, if they like know, they'll
Yeah.
be like wondering if is this it? I don't know. And so I tell people, yeah, don't even tell your partner. It's not something that they even need to be aware that there's something that they could feel in there. Just it's
So
fine.
that was a joyous conversation to have with my patient, because she,
Yeah.
but also I felt like she was leaving the room going, okay, something else is going on. My partner is,
Oh
and that's the other thing. Health doctor, you really get into their personal lives quite quickly. So
no.
it's difficult to sort of, and I'm very nosy. I don't know what you're like, but I'm incredibly nosy. I'm like, so who are you with? How is it
Oh.
going?
I don't know if it's like an American thing. Like I'm from the Northeast in America. There's like lots of different kind of like cultures, obviously in America. But from a very like buttoned up New England Asian background where we try not to kind of so I make it very comfortable for people to kind of feel like they can kind of say things with if they want to reveal things to me, or I ask as much as is necessary for like doing the health and everything. But I don't specifically like kind of ask about like how are things with your partner, but I try and kind of leave the door open if people want to ask me, they can obviously feel comfortable to do so. But I think because just by culture, like in New England, it's very like kind of the Puritans. Like,
Honestly, you know what? It's really lovely that you've said that,
yeah,
because
yeah,
growing up in a very reserved culture myself, I found
yeah.
that people have these assumptions when they walk in through the door that, oh my goodness, there's a doctor that wears a hijab, but I possibly
Oh,
uh,
oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
can't have that
She's going to be very conservative. Or, yeah, yeah, hmm
they assume that I'm going to be very conservative. So
yeah,
very early on when I started, I mean, I've been doing women's health now for like a decade. Very early on,
hmm
I just thought that if you put it out there and you take away the
hmm
shame, you're very
yeah,
practical about it. It actually makes the person feel, oh, okay, this is something I can talk about, and then all this
hmm
information, and actually that is really enlightening for me as a doctor. And I don't know whether you find that, but you find that you really do form the best patient doctor relationship once that
yeah,
comes out in the open, because there's no
hmm
judgment. First thing, and you and I always said this, as
yeah.
doctors, there's never any judgment. And I always say to my patient, there's very rarely that you can tell me anything that I haven't seen or heard before. Like
Absolutely. Yeah, mhm,
there's very little that's
exactly. A lot of people will kind of start off apologizing as if it's
yeah,
something like that we've never heard. I'm like, if I was bothered by sex, discharge, hair, anything like that, do you think that I would have become a gynecologist? No, of course not. And so, and I think at this point now, a lot of my patients find me through social media. So they've seen me talk about sex and vaginas and discharge and all this stuff. And so they know that I'm very comfortable with it. I'm very open about it. So I think that does actually like really help kind of, not speed up, but makes it so that people like very quickly are beyond the like, well, like what can I say around her, phase of establishing a relationship with your doctor. They're like, oh, Dr. Tang talks about this all the time. So they very quickly kind of feel comfortable in that space. So which is great. And
I wanted to pick.
and social media, for all its like pluses and minuses, that's one of the really great things about like, kind of coming into the real life office and the real life interactions, that people are like, oh, I feel like I know you. Like I've seen your kids. I've seen, you do like stupid stuff on TikTok. That they very quickly feel comfortable, which is great. So
And I wanted to pick up on that because,
mhm.
like myself, in my book, I've covered a lot of trans health and LGBTQ plus.
Yeah.
Because
Hmm.
we know that marginalized communities are very not very visible, especially when it comes to women's health. Because you've done so much content and an ally.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I very early on, like it was just like an expected part of my training. Like when I was a resident, this is back in 2005 to 9, like we were doing gender affirming hysterectomies. Like we had to like train, the attending who was kind of, that was her passion, was training the nurses, like how to, speak to patients using pronouns, like all of that. This is not like new stuff. And so right from the very beginning of my training, like that was very important to me. And it was just sort of an established part of gynecologic care. So, in recent years, when it's become so political in the US and in the UK as well, where it seemed like this was like a controversial thing to support gender affirming, like, no, like these are like things that have been part of gynecologic standard care for many, many, many years, even like many decades at this point. So I did feel it was very important to use my platform to speak out about, like that. And also, I speak about like abortion rights, and as do you. And, that to kind of say like, yeah, these are things that like we largely as a medical society, like every single US like professional society has a position statement supporting gender affirming care, including for minors, support for abortion and reproductive like choice. So again, these are like just the standard basic approach to health. It's not like that these are controversial from a medical perspective. And so I was really like touched where, when I get messages from patients or from, not patients, from followers or from parents of trans children who send me like thank you DMs, like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing to have a doctor speak out and support us. And I feel really terrible that more don't. Like it shouldn't be such an unusual thing for doctors to kind of publicly speak about it. So I will always feel like this really important to me. And I love that you include that in your book as well. And I do too. I have chapters on gender affirming care. I use gender neutral language or gender inclusive language as much as I can in the book. I have a chapter on intersex because a lot of like intersex people kind of get lost in the shuffle. So yeah, all of these things that I'm like, why isn't that this isn't a standard thing? And like in books, in conversation about reproductive health and gynecologic health. So I love that again we share that passion. So
And that's why we love and adore you. And so for anybody watching this YouTube live, honestly, you're part of our community here, and we want it to be inclusive, and we will learn from you. I'm sure there'll be times there will come something from marginalized communities where we didn't even know about. And so I want you guys to feel very much part of this conversation as well. So please get your questions in. We have been
yeah,
talking 25 minutes now. Would you believe it?
it flew by. I know, it was crazy.
It flew by. I hope that this is a good introduction to me, Dr. Nighat, and Dr. Karen as well. Stateside, whoop, whoop. And
Yay!
we can both hopefully answer a lot of medical questions that are coming away. We will hopefully try and like log in after Christmas. Is that what's the plan?
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah. So like we were saying, like every I love saying the fortnight, by the way, we should do that in the US more often, but
Yeah.
I like every 2 weeks or so. Yeah, and we'll announce it just to kind of remind everybody, because it ends up being like midday on the East Coast in the US. Like we'll always kind of plan to share it on YouTube later so people can watch at their convenience as well. So.
And it works out roughly here about 5 o'clock till 5:30. So between 5 and 5:30 UK time will be available here, and I'm sure I'll have loads and loads of questions. So on our first joint venture together, this was just hello.
Thank you for joining us. They're excited. This is super fun.
This will be, and there will probably be sharing of stories of what goes on in our clinical rooms as well, but it'll be all above board, and confidentiality will always be forever. And but we want to hopefully build a community with everybody here on YouTube, and your support and anything that you feel that we should be doing. We're open for ideas. Thank you so
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
everyone. Have a lovely, lovely day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I now need to work out.
Do you turn? I was about to say, do you turn it off? I don't know.
Oh, there you go.
Hopefully, we can edit this part out where we're like, how do we work this?
Otherwise, that just shows how we don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.